Have you ever just found yourself staring at your phone, completely baffled by a text message? Or, maybe the lack of one? Just wondering, what on earth kind of game is this person playing with me? Or maybe you've had that sheer absolute agony of watching a typing bubble pop up, only for it to suddenly vanish and just never return. It is a universally maddening mystery. I mean, we've all been there, right? Trying to decode mixed signals, feeling like we're just unwitting pawns in someone else's romantic chess match. Well, welcome to today's Explainer. I'm so glad you're here with us, because today we're going to unpack exactly what is happening behind the scenes of those incredibly frustrating mind games. We are going to break down the actual psychological origins of romantic manipulation. And I promise you, the truth here is far more fascinating than you might think.
So why do people play romantic mind games? It's kind of the million-dollar question. When we're on the receiving end of this manipulative behavior, our very first instinct is to assume that the person doing it, the player, is some sort of calculating evil genius. We literally picture them sitting in a villainous lair, plotting our emotional demise just for the fun of it. But actually, research paints a completely different picture.
Okay, let's dive into this. The truth is that romantic manipulation is almost always rooted in deep internal psychological turmoil. It's not some sort of evil mastery. When we strip away all that frustrating behavior, what we usually find lurking beneath the surface are hidden insecurities, really deep fears, and honestly, just a whole lot of unresolved personal issues. The game itself is actually just a coping mechanism. To really get this, we need to look at the four main psychological drivers behind this behavior. Driver number one is simply internal confusion. Often, the reason someone is acting like they don't know what they want is because, well, they genuinely do not know what they want. It is so easy to interpret a hot and cold routine as a deliberate, calculated strategy to keep you off balance. But quite often, that chaotic energy they're projecting outward, it's just a direct reflection of the chaotic energy they are dealing with inside their own heads. Like, one day they're enthusiastically planning a weekend getaway with you, and the very next day they take 14 hours to reply to a simple text. It feels incredibly personal, but the reality is it usually isn't about you at all. Now, the clinical reality of this confusion often comes down to what's called avoidant attachment. People with this attachment style find themselves caught in a really painful paradox. They deeply fear commitment, but they still have a very normal human desire for attention and validation. So what do? They engage in behaviors like breadcrumbing. They toss you just enough little crumbs of attention to keep you connected to them, but they never offer enough to form a real solid commitment. It basically keeps you at a safe distance, satisfying their need for validation while protecting their fear of intimacy. It creates an incredibly confusing dynamic for you, but it entirely stems from their own unresolved conflict. And I love how this perfectly illustrates the disconnect that makes modern dating so incredibly hard. Outwardly, you're experiencing these baffling mixed signals. But inwardly, their actual reality is just pure confusion and uncertainty about the relationship. Those totally confounding texts you're trying so hard to decode with your friends, they're simply a mirror reflecting the player's own internal mess. They aren't trying to trick you, they are just entirely unsure of their own feelings. Let's shift our focus to the slightly darker side of manipulation. Driver number two is the need for control. While some mind games stem from confusion, others are actually used deliberately in order to achieve something. And yeah, sometimes that involves hurting or controlling the other person. Now, to be absolutely clear here, this behavior is completely inexcusable. But if our goal is to understand it, we really have to look at where this intense need to dominate and control is actually coming from. So, the crucial point is this. When someone is playing games to control you, the root cause is often a profound fear of abandonment or just a really deep feeling of powerlessness within the relationship. Imagine feeling completely, utterly terrified that your partner is going to leave you. Instead of just communicating that vulnerability, which is hard, a manipulator uses mind games to try and trap the other person into staying. Or, if they feel totally powerless in the dynamic, they start pulling emotional strings just to gain back a sense of power and control. It is a highly toxic strategy, but it's born out of extreme insecurity. Now, we've looked at the internal psychology, but we absolutely cannot ignore the environment around us. Driver number three expands our investigation to external societal pressures. Specifically, we're talking about toxic gender norms and toxic masculinity. We have to look at the water we're all swimming in, and in the modern dating landscape, observed sociological trends point to that water being heavily influenced by hookup culture. And this leads to a pretty tragic reality of how hookup culture actually operates. People are simply seen as an object to be won. It routinely objectifies people, and sociologists note this happens very frequently to women. Instead of treating dating as a way to forge, a genuine human connection, These norms can twist it into a literal competition. When you view another human being not as a person with complex feelings, but merely as a prize to be claimed, manipulation just becomes the accepted game plan. Let's break down exactly what these toxic metrics of success look like. Hookup culture often celebrates very specific wins, right? Getting a phone number, getting someone to swipe right on your profile, getting them to have sex with you. In a culture that elevates these superficial achievements, manipulative behaviors aren't viewed as red flags by the people using them. They're just seen as practical tools to lure people in and secure the win. It becomes entirely about gaining status among peers, rather than actually building a relationship. Which brings us to our final point. Driver number 4 is the self-esteem void. Aside from gaining social status or exerting control, mind games are frequently used to fill a massive, gaping void of self-worth. Many people who rely on manipulation simply lack self-esteem. Perhaps they experienced harsh rejection early in life, or maybe they've just internalized a belief that they aren't good enough on their own merits. Because they do not feel worthy or confident independently, they literally outsource that job to you. Let's see how this builds into what we can call the validation cycle. It starts with a fundamental lack of self-esteem. To feel better, the person uses mind games to get someone interested in them, luring them in. And hey, it works. You show interest, and they gain the attention and validation they were craving. For a brief moment, they feel wanted, they feel worthy. But then comes the twist. Because the sole objective was just to get that quick hit of validation. Once they have it, they pull away. The game is over for them, leaving you completely confused, while they just go right back to the start of the cycle, waiting until they feel empty and need validation all over again. So what does this all mean for us? How do we use this information? Ultimately, it is all about protecting your peace through understanding. When you're on the receiving end of a mind game, it is so incredibly easy to feel inadequate or to wonder what you did wrong. But by understanding these 4 drivers, internal confusion, the desperate need for control driven by fear, toxic societal norms, and a profound lack of self-esteem, you realize that their behavior is entirely about them. It has absolutely nothing to do with your worth. Seeing the manipulator not as this all-powerful mastermind, but as someone who is really just struggling with insecurity and fear, completely strips them of their power over you. I want to leave you with this final thought. How will recognizing these psychological drivers change how you navigate modern romance? The next time someone sends you a mixed signal, or tries to breadcrumb you, or treats you like a prize to be won, you now have the clarity to see exactly what is happening behind the curtain. Do not play their game. Use this knowledge to protect your peace, set your firm boundaries, and seek out the healthy, game-free connections you actually deserve. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this empowers you out there in the dating world. Catch you next time.